What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. Hope you guys are having an awesome week, and in my last video I got a couple of comments. A bunch of you guys wanted me to take a look and sort of review the notes that I took during my 10 hours practice session, and I thought, hey, why not, let's go through the notes, give you a little bit more in-depth on my thoughts and some of the more specific situations and ideas that I took from the experience. Now, first off, I got a couple of notes for myself at the top. This is just things I wanted to talk about before we get started. This is an unscripted video, and I'm not the best at doing unscripted content, so I do apologize if the pacing of this video is not as concise as my normal stuff. But anyways, first off, I wanted to talk a little bit about my play. I know in solo queue, I'm not the best player, to put it lightly. In a lot of videos, I use footage that makes me look good in a sense. Not because I want to appear as a better player than I actually am, but more because I think it just improves the viewer experience, and I try to just have footage that makes the most sense to the clip that I'm talking about, and that's really why I do that. But it does mean that there is a lot of things I can improve on, and trust me, I know that. I know there's so many things I could do, and I'm constantly trying to improve, which is why I like to do these 10-hour sessions. As well, if you're going to do this kind of stuff yourself, the most important thing, number one, is to make sure that your practice session is fun, right? If you don't enjoy taking notes, honestly, just don't do it. Like, if you absolutely hate it, if you don't have fun with it, you really shouldn't do it. I did this kind of practice session because I enjoyed it a lot. I don't think that it was the number one most optimal way to practice. I think the number one most optimal way to practice is very close to this, and is essentially the same thing, but instead of playing, it involves a lot more watching replays. But I don't enjoy watching replays that much, so I just didn't do it. And I think that's okay, I think you're going to get a lot more out of a practice session that you enjoy rather than a practice session that feels like work, because League of Legends is a game, it's supposed to be fun, so make sure you have fun with it. Anyways, let's jump into the notes. That's enough of me talking about the intro. I sorted these notes a little bit into different categories and stuff. The first one is decision making. So right at the top here we have a couple notes, and these are essentially the raw notes that I took, just organized a little bit. Remember, it was about 18 ranked games or so over 10 hours. And so at the top here we have picking 2v2 and 3v3 fights, avoid greedy plays, and avoiding desperate and ambitious plays. So these are all pretty much the same thing. All four of these notes are essentially the same thing, and it's that I was making a lot of greedy, very ambitious plays. And it took me a while to figure out why, but that actually leads me into my next notes, and it's really good because when I took these notes, it was very scattered, disorganized, like, oh, I take, maybe I take this note in the first hour, and like 6 hours later I take like this note, and then, 3 hours before I took some of these other notes. And being able to look back and sort of organize these notes, I think, goes a really long way because it helped me figure out the reasons for why I was making these greedy plays, which is this next section of notes. And so the first thing I was doing is I need to pay a much better attention to power spikes. And this note I took when I was jungling. It's especially relevant to jungle items and power spikes level 6, level 11, even level 9 is a big power spike on a lot of champions. And I was making a lot of ambitious plays because I thought I was stronger than I actually was, and my opponents hit a power spike, but maybe I was sitting on a bunch of gold, or maybe I was a little bit behind in XP, or maybe my champion didn't spike at the same time. And I was getting punished a lot because of that, and I was letting myself get punished because I was still going for the same plays that I normally would if my opponent hadn't hit that power spike. As well, thinking ahead in terms of mechanical plays, like, when you go in for a 1v1 fight, adding up the damage that your abilities do, your full combo, like, do I have the damage to kill this guy, does he have the damage to kill me, stuff like that, so like, long before the fight is over, that you can either kill this guy or he's gonna kill you. As well, don't underestimate matchups that I think are good. So I was playing, my main jungler that I'm playing right now is Xin Zhao, and he's a very strong early game champion. But since I'm still fairly new to the role, I don't really have a very good knowledge of the matchups and stuff. And so a lot of times I would take a 2v2 fight in a lane, like a counter gank, that I thought was really good, but then I would get totally destroyed because of something that I didn't really think about. And so essentially what I need to do for my play to succeed is avoid 2v2s when ganking until I understand the matchup. There's a few matchups that I understand that I really get and that I'm confident that I can 2v2 in, but there's a lot of matchups that are a little bit weird, especially in solo queue where people play a lot of like off-meta junglers and stuff. And so until I learn the matchups and stuff, I have to absolutely avoid counter ganks because I'm not really sure how the 2v2s play out in my head. And so to fix that, I of course need to learn the matchups and stuff. And then again, positioning on squishy champions. Xin Zhao's a lot squishier than the other junglers that I'm used to playing, like Sejuani and Warwick and stuff like that. So it took me a while to start adjusting to the positioning of bruiser junglers who are, in the early game at least, a lot squishier than full tank junglers. And so all of these things are stuff that I'm starting to adjust to. I think it's stuff that I'm starting to pick up, slowly incorporate into my play. It hasn't been too long since the actual practice session that happened. I haven't played too much rank since then. I've played maybe like 5 or 6 games, I think. It's not a lot, but it's definitely stuff that I am noticing improvements in, and it's stuff that I'm definitely making progress in. So the next stuff involves a little bit of builds. I mentioned builds a little bit in the previous video, and this is pretty much just the specifics. The first one is to build Sightstone early on jungle. I tested around with this build a lot. I tested not building Sightstone, I tested building Sightstone, and honestly just building Sightstone every time is just so good in solo queue because people just don't really ward properly, and if you can contribute to that with your Sightstone, you can have such a huge impact just from that 800 gold item, and it really goes a long way. So it's definitely something I need to do pretty much every single game. And I messed around a little bit with Devour Xin Zhao builds, and eventually with this next point, so I said when I go Devour, focus on Crab and Dragon a lot more, but then the next point ties into it, and it was just make better decisions on jungle item purchases, and essentially what these two things added together for me was that I realized with my jungle playstyle, I can honestly just never build Devour. Like, when I play jungle, I try to gank 24/7. I have like 50 farm at 30 minutes because I just try to camp lane so hard, and that just doesn't work if you build Devour. And so essentially what that meant to me is that I can pretty much never play Devour or junglers until I completely change the way I play jungle, which I don't really want to do because I'm very fond of the jungle playstyle that I take. So I just can't really build Devour, and I started building Warrior on Xin Zhao, and I had a lot more success with that option. As well, during the 10-hour session, I played a game on Rek'Sai where everything just felt so wrong. I used to play Rek'Sai, like 4 months ago or so when she was released, a little bit after she was released, and I was a pretty decent Rek'Sai player, but recently in this 10-hour session I played Rek'Sai again because, I thought it'd be fun. I like the vision that she has and stuff like that, and just everything went wrong that you could think of. I got executed a red buff, I got invaded and died, I lost a 2v2 fight, I fed like 2 other lanes. It was like the worst game I ever played. And so essentially what happened was, like, I literally had no idea what I was doing, and so I had the option to either completely relearn Rek'Sai from scratch or take her out of my champion pool, and this made me decide that I'm pretty much just never going to play Rek'Sai again until I can relearn the way that she works. As well, we had a lot of notes involving teleport in the top lane, focus on capitalizing the TP advantage, early home guard if I was losing lane. That's one that I liked a lot. A lot of times when I play top lane, since I'm not an experienced top laner, I'm not the best at the matchups, a lot of times I'd fall behind in lane, and building an early home guard when you lose top lane is really good because you can start teleport home guard ganking your opponents, which can definitely put you back in the game and is not difficult at all to pull off. And so it's just TP mid, TP more, gank more, look for TPs more often. But I also took a note that I thought was very interesting, which completely contradicts the previous 4 notes right here, and that was to leave lane less in the top lane. And that was something that has struck me as very interesting because I really didn't expect that I would have notes that totally contradicted each other. But the thing is, like, it really gets you thinking that it's a lot more than just, you can't really, like, it's a lot more difficult to apply these notes to your actual gameplay than it is to just, like, look at the notes on paper and say, okay, I'm just going to do that, because things are very situational. Sometimes you should have just stayed top lane, and so it's really good to just get into the mindset of constantly thinking about what you should be doing next and what you need to be doing and how to manage your resources and making plays and stuff like that. And so it was very interesting that I had these contradicting notes. I think it was a game where I just tried to gank mid. And so really what this means to me is that the ganks that I choose to take have to be a lot more realistic, I think, in the fact that they have to have a reasonably high chance of success. Like, a lot of times I would push out the top lane. I wouldn't push out for any good reason. I would just push out and go mid, say, hey, you know, I don't have anything to do right now, so let's walk mid. And realistically, like, there was like 0% chance of that gank happening because the mid lane's pushed in and I can't even do anything. And so what that means is that I shouldn't have pushed out the top lane in the first place, rather than actually, like, the mistake was not to roam mid, the mistake was to push out top lane in the first place. And so it's a lot of like small things like that that I have to get used to when playing top lane, because I'm not an experienced top lane player at all by any means. As well, with AD carry, I need to get into the habit of positioning more when my positioning more safely when my flash is down. That's something I was not really adjusting too well, and is a big part of the reason why I'm not a very good AD carry player, is because right now, at least, I position the exact same way when my flash is up and when my flash is not up. And if you're an experienced AD carry player, you know that your flash is ridiculously important to your positioning and absolutely should affect the way you play in teamfights. And so that's something I definitely need to get the hang of if I'm going to continue playing AD carry in ranked. As well as just a champion specific one, when I was playing Vi, a lot of my initiations were either, I want to say too ambitious, but in actuality they weren't ambitious enough. Like, I would try to look for the absolute perfect initiation, when in reality it's like, I honestly should have just went in and just ult somebody and just to set up the front line. Because when you play like a tank champion, when you start a fight, you set up really good positioning for your back line, because you set the dive and your opponent's back line has to fix their positioning and they have zero chance of getting to your back line. And so when you initiate a fight, it sets up really good positioning for your back line. And with Vi, I was just being too hesitant and too slow with my initiations, and a lot of times we'd hover around mid and we'd just sit mid for like 45 seconds and then get initiated on. It's like, oh, I really probably had 2 or 3 good opportunities to actually go in and start the fight there. And so on Vi, that's something I definitely need to work on. And as well, this is one that I think I've actually gotten pretty good at reasonably fast, and that's, you know, just start, like, when you're just clearing your jungle, you just, in your head, just be thinking about, okay, what's going to happen if I get invaded right here? What am I going to do? Like, just have that in the back of your mind. Because in solo queue, a lot of players will like to do a very cheesy, like, early invade. A lot of Lee Sin players especially do this, where they take their first buff and then they invade you at your red or something like that. And if you're ready for it, it's very, very easy to prevent. So it's good to just be thinking about that when you're clearing your own jungle, especially in the early clears too, when invades are a lot more likely. And so those were all the notes that I took on decision making. There's a little bit of stuff on mechanics here. On Sejuani, I know I get a lot of comments about this one. I just totally waste my Q. I just flub the ability completely. I waste it, and so I really need to improve on that. Just get into the habit of making sure I slow roll. You want to walk into lane, apply your slow, and then when they either flash or use the gap closers, then you can use your Q to catch up to them. It's a lot better mechanically and makes your ganks a lot higher chance of succeeding. As well as Skarner mechanics was something I totally messed up, and I think Skarner was a champion that I was testing out. I'm probably just not going to play him, but if I do want to play him, I have to really think and improve my Skarner mechanics. You know, I was messing up my Qs, missing my Es, I was using my W totally wrong, like just randomly, so my Skarner mechanics were like bronze tier, so that's definitely something I need to work on if I want to play Skarner again. And as well, there's just one game where I got totally dominated by a Kindred in a 1v1 multiple times when I expected to be able to beat her. So Kindred is a pretty decent champion. She's strong. She does a lot of damage. She has a hard time in team fights, but in skirmishes, 2v2s, 1v1s, she's really, really powerful. Her kiting is great, and so that was just, like I mentioned earlier, I need to learn matchups, and this is a tip here that is like, I learned the Kindred matchup in playing against her by getting my ass whooped a bunch of times, you know. And so next time, now I got stomped by a Kindred in one game, and like the next few games I did really, really well because I was able to judge the strength of her as a champion a lot better. And so that note was very beneficial. The next thing is just habits, like things that I really need to drill into my head, like, okay, do this every time, every scenario, every game. And so the first one is just push early in every matchup. Like, if you notice my laning, I get pushed in like a lot, especially when I play mid and top lane. I get pushed in all the time because I don't know why, I just don't think to auto attack the creeps. I just don't really think about it. So it's a habit that I really need to get into the back of my mind to push at level 1 to get that early level 2, that XP advantage and stuff. As well as a jungler, check the map when ganking every single time. Just check your minimap right before you gank. So you can see it's just important to know when you go into a gank, like when you walk into that lane, you have to think, is there a chance of me getting counter ganked here? And if the answer is yes, then you would probably play the gank a little bit differently, and that's something that's very, very important. And if you check the minimap every time when ganking and you think, okay, there's a chance that I get counter ganked here, then if you get counter ganked, it's a lot more likely to go your way. As well, just something I needed to do was just ping more in starting team fights, like especially when I was playing Malphite. I really just need to ping more to communicate a little bit better with my team, to not bait them into like some bad scenarios, stuff like that. It's a pretty simple one, but it's something that's very important and can go a long way. Yeah, like I said, when playing Malphite, ping more. And this is the same one we talked about, so check the minimap before ganking a lane. Always watch for counter ganks. And then the couple things that I need to learn, that I need to like, these are things that, okay, I'm going to go on YouTube, look up some videos, you know, look up some guides, stuff like that. And the biggest one is how to counter jungle. Like, something I realized when I play jungle, I literally have zero idea of how to counter jungle. I never counter jungle. I never even like walk into the enemy jungler. Like, I walk into the enemy jungle before 20 minutes in a game, like probably like once out of every like 5 games. And there wasn't really a reason for that. Like, I just didn't really think about it, didn't really know what to do, didn't know how to counter jungle, didn't know, you know, what a counter jungle is worth, like whether or not the play is worth it. And so that's something I need to look up a lot of guides for. I'm gonna check out my boy Foxtrot for that one, and we'll watch a lot of guides on that, and I'll definitely improve on that. As well, jungle and top lane matchups, especially for my champion pool. This one's a little interesting that I need to work on, because first off, before I start learning these things, I need to work a little bit more on refining my champion pool. Right now, I'm not entirely sure what champions I want to play. Top lane, I think I'm sticking to just Malphite, but I want to expand my top lane pool a little bit. My jungle pool, I actually want to shrink a little bit. I'm stuck between like 5 or 6 champions. I can't really decide which ones to take out, which ones I enjoy more than others. So first off, I need to refine my champion pool, and once I do that, I can start really grilling down the matchups. Like, okay, I play Malphite, how does this play out against, you know, 20 other top lane champions, and really learn the nuances of every single individual matchup that I have a chance of playing against. And so that's it. That's my notes from 10 hours of practicing. Maybe you guys enjoyed this kind of video, maybe you didn't. Hopefully you did. That's going to be it. So thanks for watching. Good luck in your practice sessions. And thanks for watching.